Redfin is advising sellers to sell now and to drop their asking price. Should you sell? Redfin states nearly 1 in 5 home sellers dropped their price last month, and not necessarily because they were overpriced, but because the market and what buyers are willing to pay has shifted since the beginning of the year. This might be a housing bubble, says Dallas Fed economist in a recent interview with Fortune. Jamie Dimon says brace for a U.S. economic hurricane due to inflation. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to cover breaking news from Redfin, Reuters, and much more. There's so much information to unpack here. Thank you so much for tuning in. One caveat, I'm a Florida, Georgia real estate broker, not a financial advisor. All right, let's begin. Let's go over this article from Redfin. Redfin advises listing sooner rather than later, pricing slightly below recent comps. The housing market is shifting from a red-hot seller's market to one where buyers have some power. After nearly 2 years of a housing supply shortage and bidding wars for most homes that did come on the market, higher mortgage rates and surging prices have put a damper on home buyer demand. And it goes on to say, pricing and timing are always critical when it comes to selling a home, but especially in the current market. Redfin economists advise listing your home as soon as possible and pricing it slightly lower than you would have earlier this year. During the pandemic-fueled housing frenzy, sellers could count on getting more money for their homes than a neighbor who sold last month, said Redfin chief economist Daryl Fairweather. Those days are over. Now you should expect to get a bit less than what your neighbor got a month ago, and in a month you may get less than you would get now. For example, this Seattle condo sold for $450,000 in May. If you're planning to sell a comparable condo in the same building in June, consider listing it for around $430,000, slightly less than the one listed a month earlier. Home buyers regain some control as supply grows and demand pulls back. May marked a turning point in the pandemic housing frenzy as buyers regain some control over the market. This limited sense of control comes at a great cost as 5% mortgage rates and record high prices have edged many buyers out of the market. Pending sales posted their largest annual decline since the spring 2020, while Redfin Home Buyer Demand Index declined 9% during the 4 weeks ending May 29th. The number of homes for sale climbed to a new high for this year, posting its smallest decline since April 2020. A growing share of sellers are recognizing the new limits to their power. More than 1 in 5 dropped their price, the highest rate since October 2019. Okay, let's go over Redfin's leading indicators of home buying activity. Fewer people search for homes for sale on Google. Searches during the week ending May 21st were down 10% from a year earlier. The seasonally adjusted Redfin Home Buyer Demand Index, a measure of requests of home tours and other home buying services from Redfin agents, was down 9% year over year during the week ending May 29th. This was the 7th consecutive decline in the index. Touring activity from the first week of January through May 29th was 27 percentage points behind the same period in 2021, according to home tour technology company ShowingTime. Touring activity was lower than the first week of January for the first time this year. Mortgage purchase applications were down 14% from a year earlier, while the seasonally adjusted index was down 1% week over week during the week ending May 27th. For the week ending June 2nd, 30-year mortgage rates decreased slightly to 5.09%. So Redfin is suggesting that sellers price their homes slightly lower than similar homes that sold recently in their neighborhood, citing that buyers are sensitive to rising rates and to list as soon as possible. With surging inflation, higher gas prices, higher interest rates, rising property tax and homeowners insurance, could this be your last chance to get a high asking price? Jamie Dimon says brace for U.S. economic hurricane due to inflation. Jamie Dimon, chairman and chief executive of J.P. Morgan Chase, described the challenges facing the U.S. economy akin to a hurricane down the road and urged the Federal Reserve to take forceful measures to avoid tipping the world's biggest economy into a recession. It's a hurricane, Dimon told the banking conference, adding that the current situation is unprecedented. Right now it's kind of sunny and things are doing fine. Everyone thinks the Fed can handle this. That hurricane is right out there down the road coming our way. We just don't know if it's a minor one or a superstorm Sandy, he added. And it goes on to say, the Fed is under pressure to decisively make a dent in an inflation rate that is running at more than 3 times its 2% goal and has caused a jump in the cost of living for Americans. It faces a difficult task in dampening demand enough to curb inflation while not causing a recession. The Fed has to meet this now with raising rates and QT, quantitative tightening. In my view, they have to do QT. They do not have a choice because there's so much liquidity in the system, Dimon said. And he goes on to say, you gotta brace yourself. JP Morgan is bracing ourselves, and we're going to be very conservative in our balance sheet, Dimon added. This might be a housing bubble, says Dallas Fed economist. This might be a housing bubble. The evidence suggests it looks like a housing bubble, a little bit like a duck. It walks like a duck, it looks like a duck, it certainly might be a duck, Martinez Garcia tells Fortune. While he won't go so far as to call this a housing bubble, he says it's time to raise awareness to the potential risks that housing poses. Martinez Garcia notes that this is the time of fighting inflation, with the Federal Reserve already putting upward pressure on mortgage rates. Over the past 5 months, this has sent the average 30-year fixed mortgage rate up from 3.11% to 5.09% as the Fed works to rein in price growth. That's one way to take some air out of housing, Martinez Garcia says. Okay, so what do you think? Do you agree with Redfin? Do you think this is a good time to sell? Let us know in the comments. Okay, so today's takeaway. Redfin is urging sellers to price their homes slightly lower than similar homes that sold recently in their neighborhood, citing that buyers are sensitive to rising rates and to list as soon as possible. Redfin stated that sellers should expect to get a bit less than what their neighbors got a month ago, and in a month, they may get even less than they would get now. More than 1 in 5 dropped their price, the highest rate since October 2019. And finally, Jamie Dimon is calling for an economic hurricane due to high inflation followed by a recession, which will have downward pressure on the housing market. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit that like button. I'm a Florida, Georgia real estate broker, not a financial advisor. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video.